All right, the Nigerian Senate has, in a resolution, rejected the sale of national assets to shore up foreign reserves and adopt other recommendations aimed at getting the country out of recession.
The federal lawmakers also asked President Buhari to urgently prepare and submit an economic stimulus bill containing incentives designed to pull the country out of recession. TVC News' Somna Sambo reports.
The rejection of sales of the national assets to shore up Nigeria's dwindling foreign reserves is part of the recommendations made by the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on State of the Economy that was adopted by all senators.
This very sensitive issue should be approached with a commitment to protecting the common patrimony of Nigerians by preventing assets from falling into the hands of sharks, asset strippers, cannibalizers.
The Senate is not in support of sale of, it should be clearly stated. Oppose to the proposal to the sale of national assets to shore up nations' foreign reserves.
We recommend that the Parliament do amend Section 162 of the Constitution to make it compulsory for the country to save money for the rainy day.
To shore up foreign reserves, the Senate advised the executive to urgently engage in dialogue with militants and relevant parties in the Niger Delta in order to return the country to the projected production of 2.2 million barrels of oil per day.
We respect our president, we respect our deputy senate president, but their opinions alone does not represent the opinion of the Senate. Today, we have come to the opinion of the Senate.
You all know my own personal views on some of the recommendations, but I think democracy is working and we must accept that to work. We have our own recommendations that we must see that we fast track, particularly a number of bills that we need to do. Again, on the area of oversight, I think it's very important that we begin to do this regards the 2016 budget.
The Senate also asked the executive to urgently negotiate foreign concessionary loans to cover revenue shortfalls in the implementation of the 2016 budget.
If there was any emotion, the emotion was Nigeria. If there was any party, the party was Nigeria. And I think in line with this, we believe that is what the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria represents.
The Senate has requested the executive to forward to it an economic stimulus bill containing all the incentives and other packages meant to remove Nigeria out of recession. Senate President Bukola Saraki is also to lead a delegation of principal officers to submit all these recommendations to President Muhammadu Buhari. Somna Sambo, TVC News, Abuja.
All right, we're being joined now by a former chairman, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Prince Wale Oyekoya. It's nice to see you join us. You're welcome.
And of course, we have joining us from Port Harcourt, Public Affairs Analyst William Nsobundo. Good morning and thanks for joining us from Port Harcourt. Okay, so the argument as to whether the federal government will indeed sell national assets or whether they just flew a kite to find out exactly what the thinking of Nigerians, is. But, on a very serious note, is it something that government should be contemplating in the first place, whether to sell our national assets?
You just said it, contemplations. The federal government are coming up, they say that is the opinion of some people, of some quarters. But the FEC, which is the Federal Executive Council, has all the opinions of what is going to be done. But you have to think about how did we even arrive to the issue that we wanted to sell our national assets, which is the recession. How did we get to recession? It's because we have a slip on our GDP successfully about 2 quarters. And we are trying to get out of this recession. So it's just the opinion of some people that what can we do to get out of this recession? That is why people have the opinion that, okay, let us sell the national asset, which I believe is a mixed reaction. It could be sold, it could not be sold. People have the opinion that in the past, what happened to all the assets that were sold, especially the PCN, the Genco, all of them, that what happened? Up to this moment, we are not having even 6 hours light. That is the opinion of some people, of some quarters. But the FEC, which is the Federal Executive Council, has all the opinions of what is going to be done. But we have to think about how did we even arrive to the issue that we wanted to sell our national assets, which is the recession. How did we get to recession? It's because we have a slip on our GDP successfully about 2 quarters. And we are trying to get out of this recession. So it's just the opinion of some people that what can we do to get out of this recession? That is why people have the opinion that, okay, let us sell the national asset, which I believe is a mixed reaction. It could be sold, it could not be sold. People have the opinion that in the past, what happened to all the assets that were sold, especially the PCN, the Genco, all of them, that what happened? Up to this moment, we are not having even 6 hours light. So people have the opinion that
although light has relatively improved
because we're in the rainy season, let me tell you the truth. By the time we're in the dry season, it's another ball game because they will tell you that Kanji Dam is dried up. So let us forget about that. We are having a regular light now. Don't let us be deceived, the citizens. We will see the result once the rainy season kicks in. So people have the opinion that what happened in the past with all the assets they've been selling to themselves. You know what I mean by themselves, the politicians. That has the money been trickling down to the citizens? Are the poor citizens benefiting? The answer is no. And I'm of the opinion that instead of using the word sales, why can't we use privatize? Maybe you can put this into the private sector, to the PPP. That way the government can still be generating funds, and at the same time you can concession some of these assets. Don't get me wrong, we have so many wasteful resources that we have there, we call assets, we have become liabilities. Look at the National Stadium, look at the so many National Theatre. National Theatre is there. Even in the agri sector, look at almost of the so-called the storage facilities that have not been really utilized. That is why we have so many problems today. So it's a mixed reaction, but I don't want the federal government to jump into the conclusion, or because of the people are saying we should sell, who are the people to buy? If it is transparent, yeah, people have the opinion that yes, let it be transparent, let everybody know what is being sold, and we have to know the pedigree of the people buying these assets. We have to go away from monopoly of our economy in the hands of one person. I said this in time with a number that we have almost about 170 million people, and you put the economy of almost about 170 million people into the hands of one person. Everything is Dangote. I've been saying this now with a number that why can't you bid other people so that it's going to be floating? It will not be only one person. Monopoly is not good for our economy. It's one of the reasons that we find ourselves in this kind of recession. But how do we get out? We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
All right, we have from Port Harcourt studio, William Nsobundu. William, it's good to have you join us. Now, let's create a scenario. Even though we've heard categorically the Senate and the government is saying we are not going to sell, but let's come to a scenario where there's going to be a sale of national assets. How will that help? Is that more beneficial for the economy at this time of recession or not?
Thank you very much for your question. In my own opinion, I would like to canvass 3 options that I believe the federal government should be looking at to shore up external reserves, considering the downward slide in the value of the naira. One of the options is outright sale of underutilized assets. Assets that have not been properly utilized. Assets that have been running at a huge loss. Then the second option is looking at the option of downscaling government's investment in some of these assets, like for instance LNG. The third option is to look at the possibility of doing a concession, like what was done under the tenure of the then President Olusegun Obasanjo, when the entire ports were concessioned. At this point in time, Nigeria needs to diversify its economy. We need to shore up external reserves. Our major, earnings, in terms of forex, comes from crude oil. And I sincerely believe that we can no longer sustain this economy being dependent on oil. I listened to someone who said something very profound. A pastor, a senior pastor at Salvation Ministry, Pastor David Ibiome, and he said that we need to look at developing byproducts. We also did a research and we discovered that you have over 6,000 byproducts from crude oil, and Nigeria doesn't manufacture most of these byproducts. So the government will really need to consider either an outright sale. For me, I support an outright sale of underutilized assets that are running at a loss. Like for instance, the Kaduna Port Harcourt War Refinery has been running at a huge loss. In April 2016, based on the NNPC report, a deficit of about 7-point-something billion was incurred on these 3 refineries. I endorse an outright sale of any government asset that has not been generating profit. It is not reasonable to keep these assets, okay? But for the assets that are performing, like LNG, government has a stake in LNG. What we can look at is government to downscale its investments. Because in Nigeria, government has not shown capacity, has not demonstrated ability to manage public assets in terms of running them efficiently. The private sector has done better in terms of managing business. Like for instance, the then Elemo Petrochemical, which is today in Dorama, has showcased capacity by reviving that plant. And a couple of byproducts of crude oil are being manufactured. But we need to step up our game as a country. So government will sell assets that are running at a loss, generate income, shore up external reserves, and when you do that, the value of the naira will go up. And then you also have the capacity, okay, to provide infrastructure. You cannot drive investments if you don't have the underlying infrastructure. So it depends on what you're looking at.
Prince Wale believes that refineries, for example, I mean, you've had turnaround maintenance over the years and they still have not been able to come back to life. That such, assets really should be sold because they have already become, liabilities for us. But like former President Olusegun Obasanjo said, that he is actually in support of selling some of these assets. But the real issue, which you already raised, is the transparency and the danger of it going to a few hands, and then you have another situation on our hands. So what kind of balancing act can government do in such a way that these assets, underscore assets,
we have to understand,
are not put in hands of few people?
One thing that we are making mistake in Nigeria is that what is happening in Nigeria now, which is called recession, happens everywhere in the world. It's just the way we are able to manage it. It happens in US, it happens in UK. It even currently happening in the Saudi Arabia. You know what the Saudi Arabia did now? Their national oil company, Aramco, they have to sell out 5%, which worth about 2.2 trillion naira. Dollars, sorry. Now they are selling out 5% because of this recession, because of the problem with the shortfall of oil, which is giving them almost about $100 billion in order for them to cushion the other effect. So it's possible, but if it is done under a transparency act, a lot of people will be bidding. But at the end of the day, the government will still come out and bail them out, just like what happened with the Audi Disco and Genco. We need to move beyond all this because it's not helping the masses.
Should there be a repurchase clause, like some have, advised should be the case?
Definitely, there should be. If you cannot handle what you already bid for, they take it away from you. But if not, it's the masses that will be suffering, and there are so many ways we can raise funds. If most states can be doing what Lagos State is doing today, see, sometimes you look at, many people does not believe that Ambode is going to perform on this way. But you know what he did? Infrastructures. You see that a lot of people are moving to most places that this man has already waking up, that is already dead. A lot of businesses are coming up, and it's creating employment. And by creating employment, a lot of people are taking care of their family. So we keep on talking about federal government. What about the states? What about the local government? We have 3 tiers of government. We put the pressure on the federal government. That is why we have this problem. Every state will go to the federal government for the food stamp. We call it food stamp because wherever you cannot generate income to take care of your people, you can't get food stamp from the federal government.
Indeed.
The government we are running today are just too expensive. Extremely expensive. I was in Ekiti recently. I passed through Osun State, Ekiti State. It's all bush, left and right. And these are arable lands. I see no reason why all these states in Osun, Ekiti, or your state cannot pay the salary of their staff. I just imagine when I was telling my driver, I said, look at all these resources we are wasting. Ordinary 20 tractors, we do all this job. By that way, we do this job by applying, by planting. You will create employment, you increase your GDP. A lot of people will not be moving to the cities. But we don't have visionary leaders. And that is why we find ourselves in this recession. What causes recession? We cannot have a manufacturer producing. And where you cannot manufacture, what happens? Most of the businesses will go to another countries. And who suffer? The citizens. We keep on importing. We need to increase our export bills instead of increasing our importing bills.
Okay, now let me bring in Williams back in here. Now, Williams, you have supported outright sale of underutilized assets, and you also talked about government removing hands from involvement in some of these ventures. Generally, you talked about concession. But let us look at the issue of taxation. Because all of this is emanating from the current situation Nigeria finds itself now and looking for solution. We still know that a lot of businesses in Nigeria don't pay taxes. What would you advise government instead? Because we had analysts on this same issue yesterday, especially somebody from the Niger Delta, and they're saying, the militants are saying, we will not sell. These are the only things, these are the assets we have and can lay claims to. If anyone sells them and anyone buys it, we'll see how the person is coming to operate them. So we're still going to have the same issues on our hands. So what of the issue of taxation? What would you advise in that regard? How helpful would it be?
The issue of, in response to your question, what I will advise is that whatever assets that will be sold, you need to have a stakeholders engagement, okay? It's very important that the federal government pursues dialogue, sincere dialogue, and so that whoever is taking over these assets will have a conducive environment to operate. And I also think you raised the issue of taxation. Am I correct?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Now, on the issue of taxation, for government to shore up revenue, I think the Federal Inland Revenue Service needs to further computerize its entire system and also collaborate with the Corporate Affairs Commission to keep a track on companies and have a synergy where companies are monitored. When you want to improve tax returns, you need to veer off penalty and rather look at persuasion. Look at enlightenment and simplify the process of tax remittances. That is another option for government to shore up revenue. But like for me, the assets that are underutilized, the assets that have been mismanaged over the years due to the endemic corruption in this country need to be sold to competent business persons who can revitalize these assets and add to the value chain of the economy. So that's very important. Yeah.
Okay, let me come back to WALE OYEKOYA here in the studio. The Senate has actually said the federal government should draw up, an economic stimulus plan, and of course to also draw policies to lower interest rates for genuine investors to come in and to encourage small farmers. I mean, you're a farmer. That should really excite you. Should government really be looking at this? And of course, don't forget that President Buhari, there had been talks, we don't even know if that's been confirmed, about his desire to seek for extra powers in order to be able to quickly stimulate the economy and remove those laws that are, some kind of impediment on development.
See, when the situation we find ourselves today, even the federal government are a little bit contributing to the conflicts in the sense that they are not sending the right signals to the investors.
Okay.
Especially between the CBN and the Ministry of Finance. The Minister for Finance and the CBN governor, they have not even reached an agreement terms on how to get about the interest rate. The MPR today is 14%. And the inflation now is almost about 17 to 18%. It's sending the wrong signals to the foreign investor. I believe in the FDIs, which is the foreign direct investments. Because that's the only way that can take us out of the hook today. Because everything we do in Nigeria depends on dollarization, and we need to change that one to nairalization. We have to believe in what we do in our country. We are not proud of our country, and if you are not proud of your home,
all right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast. On this segment, we're looking at the proposed sale, the call for sale, not proposed, but the call for sale of national assets. We've heard this from different quarters of the country, people, prominent Nigerians, recommending to government that there should be sale of property, of Nigerian assets, of federal government assets. Although the government has come to say, no, we don't want to sell this, but we're looking at these because people are still talking about it. There are people who still don't understand the implications and even understand what this whole thing is about.
Absolutely. And before long, you'll have a situation where, you have this line drawn between those who are for,
and
sale
those
of
against.
national assets and against.
We have Prince WALE OYEKOYA with us in the studio here. We've been talking about this, and we also have in our Port Harcourt studio William Nsobundu. Now, William, let me come to you on this. Now, from the budget for 2016, 6 trillion naira budget, let me say, how would you assess the performance of the budget so far? Because we just have 1 quarter to the end of the year. Because there are desperate moves now for the situation of things to change.
The reality is that a lot of Nigerians are going through unprecedented hardship. Inflation is an all-time high. If you want to use economic, language, the technocrats will tell you the budget is performing so well. But the reality on ground is that Nigerians are going through a lot of hardship. The performance of a budget to a layman is the availability of infrastructure, good roads, availability of food on his table, the availability of money to go to the market, and acquire some basic needs, the availability of shelter. And so far, I haven't seen that on ground. But I think that the government is also doing its best. So all I want to say is that the government must ensure that monies voted for capital projects are released expeditiously. Because when monies voted for capital projects are released, it has a multiplier effect on the economy. It has a multiplier effect on the economy. And it leads to creation of employment. It leads to additional value, in terms of other, kinds of businesses. Like, for instance, when you release money for capital projects in the area of construction, it has a multiplier effect on suppliers who supply asphalt, bitumen, and all that. So I think if you ask the layman, we can see the result of the budget implementation. The government needs to fast track and put its acts together. But I believe that the kind of energy and focus I have seen on the part of the president, I have a lot of confidence.
Okay.
It's very important.
Okay, William. All right, let's come back very quickly to WALE OYEKOYA. Yes, there are likely signs, that government may give up 5% of its 49% stake at the NLNG. That's on one hand. Maybe you want to even respond to what he's saying. And of course, Adeosun, the finance minister, has actually said that Nigeria is coming out already, gradually out of recession. Do you see any signs to indicate that?
Yeah, maybe in the third chorus.
Okay.
Yes, we might, if proper, with the proper indication that we're having on the terms of the federal government, they do the right thing and are able to stimulate the economy by providing employment, especially providing power. Because without power, there's nothing we can do. If it is just that one thing that the administration can provide for people, a lot of people will be off the hook on the street.
That's understandable, but my question is, are there signs to actually show that we're really coming out of recession? According to, Kemi Adeosun, who
Yes.
says we're coming out of it already.
Well, no, not so soon. That's a political statement. I could understand what she's saying, being the Minister for Finance, but the reality on the ground, ask common Nigerian, they will tell you that they have not seen the signs. But the government need to come out with their plans. They might have something hidden secret, but this is beyond secret now. Let the nations know what you wanted to do. That way, maybe everybody can say, okay, there's hope. Because it's only hope that can take us out of this thing. Okay, in another 2-3 months, we are going to have, yes, I believe the president is very serious about turning the economy around and the economic team. We just believe that let us give them the opportunity, let us give them more time so that they can come up with their plans and see what will happen. Yeah, I believe we are really going to come out of it.
Okay.
All right, let's bring in Foladele in here to give us a reaction from the people on social media again.
Morning again,
Fola,
Mike.
good morning.
Lovely to see you, Prince
How
Wale.
hopeful are
Thank you.
Nigerians that are coming out of recession soon?
You know, Ngozi, this is actually one of those times where you can't really tell what the majority is thinking because there seem to be a lot of mixed reactions.
Okay.
Some people are for, some people are against. A lot of people have become analysts in this time,
Yeah,
suggesting
of
what
course.
they think, would be the best route to go. Well, let's see some of these reactions I speak of. First one from @Ben Bruce. He says, if we reduce our salary as politicians, reduce convoys, stop importing rice and funding pilgrimages, we won't need to sell national assets. Next one from @Gabriel B. Idowu. He says, anyone that opposes the sale of NNPC are the ones that benefit from its rot. Recession or no recession, NNPC must be sold. Next one from @Omski2000. He says, if you sell out national assets to fund the 2016 budget, come 2017, will you sell again to fund the 2017 budget? We already know the answer. Yinka Wumi says, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, and this was actually in response to the news story that Lai Mohammed is saying that this, was just speculation and the federal government isn't actually going to go on with this. So he says, Alhaji Lai Mohammed should stop talking on behalf of the government. Suggestion that economic team approved is not speculation.
But he's the mouthpiece of government, so he can't
Right,
stop
so
talking
he
on
can
behalf of
actually-
government.
He tells us what government.
So he tells us what the government
Yes,
is
he's our
planning.
information. We have to believe him. All right, Reno Mokri says, selling national assets because of recession is like selling your house because of car troubles. Where will you sleep after fixing the car? And this last tweet was in response to this. Prince Wale, I'm coming to you for this one. I want your reaction to this, analogy.
Okay.
And Fola Darams says, Reno Mokri, it is simple, Ogareno. Use the proceeds generated from sale of house to buy another house. So what are your thoughts?
Very profound.
What do you think about Reno Mokri's analogy? Do you think it best describes, the situation?
Actually, you see these people, they know where the shoe pinches. They are the one feeling it. All those people in Abuja, they don't even know what you are talking about. But it's true what he had rather said, that if you say because you are broke today, you said they only car you out. What about when you pay off your debt? What will happen? You will still be tracking? It's just like say because you are stressed and you are smoking. What happens after you take off the cigarette?
After the cigarette.
The
stress
is
continues.
there. So I believe they are very right with what they are saying. And the government really needs to listen to the people. That is my own opinion. They have to listen.
Just to reduce that disconnect between. All right, Fola, thank you very much.
Thank you,
much.
Fola.
Thank you.
Okay, William Nsobundo, what would be your reaction to some of those tweets? One or two of them actually believes that the NNPC holds the key to turning Nigeria around if it is sold.
The NNPC has not been a profitable company. The NNPC has also been more of a regulator and a participant at the same time. The NNPC needs to be, in my opinion, privatized. And a lot of its assets, with particular reference to the refineries, have been running at a huge loss. The economy is bleeding. Government is not making a single profit from these assets. They need to be sold to competent companies that have the capacity, companies that have demonstrated expertise to manage this kind of facilities. There are certain climes where government has demonstrated expertise in managing public assets. Like, for instance, the British Airways, the British Telecoms are profitable ventures which are owned by the British government. Sapetro is a profitable oil company. Okay? So, but the NNPC, in comparison to other states, okay, like for instance, in Russia, Gazprom, the gas company owned by the Russian government, is a profitable gas company. But NNPC has not demonstrated such capacity to excel. And so I believe it should be sold. But let the bidding process be very transparent. And it should not be sold to government cronies and allies. It should be sold to competent persons. Like, for instance, recently in the United Kingdom, the British government concessioned one of the airports. I believe it's the Gatwick Airport. The British Airways, the British Telecoms are profitable ventures which are owned by the British government. Sapetro is a profitable oil company. Okay? So, but the NNPC, in comparison to other states, okay, like for instance, in Russia, Gazprom, the gas company owned by the Russian government, is a profitable gas company. But NNPC has not demonstrated such capacity to excel. And so I believe it should be sold. But let the bidding process be very transparent. And it should not be sold to government cronies and allies. It should be sold to competent persons. Like, for instance, recently in the United Kingdom, the British government concessioned one of the airports, I believe it's the Gatwick Airport, to a consortium led by a Nigerian.
Nigerian, yes.
So we must go beyond, political, sycophancy and patronage to make sure that these assets, like NNPC in particular, that has been moribund and performing below capacity, should be sold to competent companies. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether they are foreign or local, but competence is the key word.
All right, Williams, thank you. Now, we are winding down on this segment, but let me ask you, Prince Oyekoya. About a few days ago, OPEC member countries came together to agree for the first time in a very long time to cut down on oil production, as the case may be. Could that be one of the signs that the price of crude oil is going to rise, and then member countries are going to benefit? And if we narrow it down to Nigeria, maybe some semblances of hope somewhere.
The reason they are reducing production is because we have so many glut of oil. So just like Nigeria oil too, we have them in the sale. Nobody wants to buy them. The same thing with Saudi Arabia, the same thing with Venezuela. So many other countries, they are cutting that because just like you are producing and nobody is buying. So they have no choice than to cut down the production, and at the same time, it's just a law of demand and supply. By the time the demand is high and the supply is very little bit elastic, then the price might go up. That is just the option that they are giving out. Just like what my brother rather said on the other side. It's not the sales of this NNPC that's going to take out of the recession. I believe in privatization. I still believe it in PPP, public-private participations. In other words, the federal government can still be making income out of it, because you have to remember that all the staff working in the federal government, they pay the staff through most of this money that the federal government is generating. But the problem is, are they really being utilized well? The answer is no. So why can't we just privatize it and see what will happen. Give it to concession. Look at Ethiopian Airlines. They are doing good. Ordinary Ethiopia, they can manage their own airline. In fact, that is the best asset they have.
Even Rwanda has a national airline.
Kenyan Airways.
South Africa have it. And
but most of those airlines, they have ventures from Europe and all of that. That's making them function.
We do have before. It's just due to the corruption. That's why Nigeria Airways went underground.
Okay.
Too much corruption.
So what's the way forward? I mean, looking at all of this, sell or not to sell, what are those, policy moves that government needs to put in place very urgently to actually bring Nigeria out of recession? Because that's what government really wants to do anyway.
Whatever the government is going to do, either the federal or local government is to improve on their infrastructures. Power is the most important thing. If there's power, there will be a lot of employment. You have to think of how you can generate employment. Well, we have so many of our youth now that are finished 3-4 years ago from university. There's no job. A lot of them they wanted to do something, but there's nothing there for them. So by the time you are able to stabilize our power, I believe a lot of income will be generated, a lot of employment will be generated, and definitely you have to invite most of these foreign investors. But if the environment is not conducive, I don't care where you go, no foreign investor will come to your country when there's no security, when there's no light, there's no road. Everything is comatose right now. But the government really to focus on how it can revive the economy through infrastructure.
All right, Prince WALE OYEKOYA, thank you for joining us on the program. Thank you
so much.
And William Nsobundu, thank you very much for joining us on the breakfast program today.